How you doing? Uh, Today I'm going to talk about a social issue that most of us have faced at one point or another, and it's that you know, don't blame God for your life being the way that it is. The current mentality of Americans and God in public's lives is really the issue. All my life I've heard people use God as a scapegoat, as an excuse, and as a reminder of right and wrong. I've heard God blamed for all the bad, praised for the good, sometimes by the same people. It rubs me the wrong way to such a degree that I actually get offended and then eventually get angry. But I'll explain. When I was a kid, I heard my mother tell me not to use the Lord's name in vain. Being a kid, I didn't know the depth of what this correction was about. I just knew Mom said it was bad and I shouldn't do it. I felt like I did that I'd be hurting his feelings, making him sad or disappointed in me. Um, that's a lot of weight on a child. Because God is such an important part of our lives as kids. Um, I really miss the innocence of childhood, but that's another topic for another day. What my real problem is, you may ask, is that people are not held responsible for their own actions. No one is to blame for our current situation in life, but yourself. No one forced us to make the decisions we've made but us. The decisions that you make in life they lead you to where you are. And if you don't like where you are, then, you should be disappointed in yourself, not in God. It's not fair. Don't blame God. You hear people say, "Why me, God? What did I do to deserve this, God?" And uh, I don't think that that's fair at all. There are people who are in horrible situations, faced with terminally ill family members, loved ones, and they feel like God is punishing them because their loved ones are ill or dying or tragically taken. And I find this such a selfish way to feel, and it's so off-putting. For one, God is not punishing you. He's not punishing your loved ones. He has his reasons, but God is not a cruel God. He doesn't hurt your loved ones or hurt you to get back at you. How could you blame the Lord for something like that? That's a cruelty that God's not capable of. I have little tolerance for people who lack individual accountability. It goes with the job. Uh, it's also a social issue, I think. It stems from a number of things. Don't blame God because you didn't have the same opportunities as others. We are all given the same basic opportunities to work towards goals and improving our own quality of life. Um, it is harder for some than it is for others, and I understand that. But you can choose to accept that, or you can choose to fall victim to it. There again, you're still given the choice. Some people complain about not being able to go to college. Now, and that it's a gateway to a better life. We pretty much have determined that. But this burns me up. If you spent your younger years of your life in high school, okay, you did partied and you did things that kids do. You're lazy. You don't keep your grades up. You get in trouble. Some kids party and experiment with drugs, and they refuse to work hard. But then here you are with zero job skills, no college to go to, and you can't get a job. When your bills are due and your rent's coming up, you have no food in the house, why turn to God and say, "Why do you hate me so much?" It doesn't make sense to me. God did not force you to choose a path in life that led you to poverty or to hard times. God didn't force you to focus on the fun rather than hard work. Don't get me wrong, not everyone has their life handed to them on a silver platter, and I understand that, but for those out there who have squandered away their opportunity, you have to take responsibility for this. It's the first step to improving your life and improving society. Some think that I'm too judgmental, that I'm too harsh with my beliefs in this respect. I can see why it would appear that way. I have little tolerance and I'm very open about my disapproval of people who blame the rest of society and God for their current situation. I'm always civil, though. I always have empathy for those who fall in hard times, because I was there. I've been there. I've made simple choices. I could choose to struggle through my life, or I could work harder than I ever believed that I could, and improve my life and to make something of myself. And that's what I chose to do. Um, I grew up really, really poor. My mother and father got divorced when I was 7, and my mom had few job skills to fall back on. She worked hard to make ends meet, like any good mother would. But two kids in daycare, the cost of living, and a small income make life really challenging. We lived very meager. I remember there were a lot of nights where my mom would skip dinner to make sure that we had enough to eat. It was pretty bad. To this day, I'll never forget the sacrifices my mom made, and I am who I am today in large part to my mom. So needless to say, I wasn't given the opportunities that some kids had. I didn't have a car. Woe is me, I didn't have a car. But where we lived was kind of like this rural suburban communities to where everything was kind of spread out. So if you didn't have a car and you didn't have your parents to drive you around to and from work, it was hard to work. So I got a job at a place really close to my school, and I would get off of school and I would go to work. I gave up my sports to work this job, and then I saved up enough money to buy myself this car, and then I could drive and go to get different jobs, and I worked and I saved money, and I understood the concept of earning and saving. I dropped out of high school though after my junior year. I didn't finish my senior year. It was the dumbest thing I could have done, the biggest mistake I made. High school is not, in my opinion, critical education. It is foundation, but it's not critical education. But what it is critical motivation in that educational environment for kids to pursue a higher education when they become adults. At 18 years old, no one hands you a manual and says, "Here, you're an adult now. Figure it out." If you don't have that environment to encourage personal growth, education, you're gonna flounder. Anyway, I went to I got my GED and went to a community college, but that didn't last long because when you're working on these jobs and you have these bills and you have an apartment to pay for and you're living by yourself, I started working up to 3 jobs, and there's not a lot of time for school when you're working 3 jobs. So school kind of fell by the wayside. My girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, moved in, and we supported each other, and slowly things started to get better for us, but still never had that real quality of life that we wanted. After 14 years, we still work very hard to make sure that we have a good quality of life for our kids because we remember where we came from, and that's important. But I made a choice when I was young to party and do all the things that kids shouldn't do, but they do it anyway. It took me until I was 25 and I had a son and I had a dead-end job before I decided to stop being bitter and do something about my situation. So I joined the Army. I got my life on track. I had a responsibility to provide for my wife and kids, and I could have sat around and blamed God for letting me grow up poor or not giving me the opportunities of education, even though I squandered them away. I could have blamed God. I could have complained and whined and let my life slip down this downward spiral and get worse and worse, but I choose to improve the quality of life that I had. And today I live well, I have savings, I have a retirement plan, a cozy home, my kids are happy, safe, and healthy. Ta-da! It's not impossible. And you know what? If I had sat around and blamed God for it, I probably would be worse off than I am now. But I took responsibility. It's the first step to fixing your life. So why I get so mad at people for blaming God for their problem is really, really simple. It's not his fault. Look at all the beautiful things in the world. Witness a child being born. I saw both of my kids be born. And tell me you can't believe that that's not a miracle. God's responsible for that. I can't believe that God can be responsible for that miracle and then be responsible for all the atrocities in the world. For someone to blame God for atrocities, how could you? How dare you? Years ago when Hurricane Katrina hit, Billy Graham had a daughter. He has a daughter, Anne Graham, and she was interviewed on the Early Show. And Jane Clayson asked her, how can God let something like this happen? And Anne Graham gave a response that was simple and insightful and profound. And her response is something to the effect of, "I believe God is deeply saddened by this, just as we all are. But for years we've been asking God to get out of our schools, to get out of our government, and to get out of our lives. And God, being the gentleman that he is, has calmly backed out. And how can we expect God to give us his blessing and his protection if we demand he leave us alone?" When I read that, I was like, that was the most sensible thing I've ever heard. Pure common sense. I was amazed by how simple what she said was, but yet how powerful her words were. Um, so if you spend your whole life living outside of God's plan of righteousness and good, how can you expect Him to provide for you and shower you with grace? Um, Ben Stein wrote an op-ed about how the world's going to hell, while people sit back and complain about it, but yet they don't lift a finger spiritually to do anything about it. He said that so many people get caught up in being politically correct that religion's taken a back seat to political correctness, and that America has become an inexplicably atheist nation, and he doesn't like how this is being shoved down our throats. The long story short is this: the country was founded on Christian principles, one nation under God. Christian morality is the basis for the Constitution and its rights and wrongs. And now that we are a nation of many cultures, we have begun to believe that fairness to all reigns, and that religion should be a quiet belief system for fear of offending those who don't follow our certain choices in faith. Our nation and our world will not improve until God is allowed back into our lives across the board, and into our schools where prayers should be said, at work where God needs to fight greed, and in our lives where our strength is needed most. Thanks for listening, Sergeant Joshua Tatro. Bye.